The recent Alpha Beach surge caught our attention when this picture was sent in. This prompted a follow-up visit to the affected area. The severity of this occurrence, which has been blamed on global warming, calls for concern. And so we visited the Minister for Environment, Hajia Amina Mohammed, who painted a not too pleasant picture.
When both the Minister of State and I, input into the final agreement that we got in Paris for climate change, the next thing we did when we came home was to travel around the country to see how this affected us. And one of the first places that we went to was Alpha Beach. We also went to the Atlantic Beach proposal that is being done right now. And I think this was in December, so not even in the new year, and there had already been a surge a few months before. And I think it is quite alarming. The sea is coming in much faster than people are expecting. And for the first time, we're actually looking at climate migrants in our country, because when we're talking about the sea surges, there's very little we can do other than continue to advocate and to get agreements, as in Paris, to look at global warming. Because this is a climate change issue that is very much dependent on how the world as a whole produces and consumes. What emissions are we putting out there that is warming this world, that is giving us these sea rises and hence these surges that we're getting. So I think, for the first time we have a powerful voice in saying, look, this is affecting us directly, and the people of Alpha Beach have rightly to be concerned. What we saw there when we were there was pretty tragic, from the primary healthcare centres that had been washed away, and to see that people's homes, the roads, the infrastructure we're putting in there is also at risk.
While the Lagos State government have had to construct some groins along that axis, these may not be enough to save the coastline.
We are going to have to relocate. Eventually, we're going to have to address these in much more fundamental ways, as we're trying trying to bend the curve on emissions and get global temperatures down. We have got as we say, we're looking at some of the work that the Ministry of Environment, together with the Ministry of Environment in Lagos State, are to put those gabions in, to see the groins in that you see. There are some there, and they help to divert it. There are other issues that come with coastal erosion for us when we're seeing vessels that are beaching. These have to be moved. So there are a number of things we can do to alleviate it, but ultimately, there's a lot more that needs to be done globally to help us.
In 1981, the Ecological Fund was established as an intervention fund to receive 1% of the Federation account. The amount was increased to 2% in 1992. This was meant to provide resources to ameliorate ecological problems such as coastal erosion. What's the fate of the fund?
From the last administration, this ministry was not involved in the running of the Ecology Fund. This is a question that's best put to the Secretary, to the government, to the Federation, because they've been managing that. And they have looked to see how they can alleviate some of these issues with the way in which they dispense funding from the Ecological Fund. So I think that we will need to review that, given the new challenges that we have. And as a government, this is something that would be, I think, very useful, because we can then work with states on the Ecological Fund. They get a part of the percentage that is put aside. The federal government gets a part of it. And I think that we need to try to find a way of partnering to leverage more funds from outside of our borders. There's a lot of international finance that's available, but when a country can also put something forward, then you can almost double and treble your resources towards the same issues. The issues are many. Desertification is one, erosion is another, the flooding situation that we had in the country in 2012, the coastal erosion, all of these are big priorities for the government. So I think that, watch that space, and you will see that we will be more responsive, I think, to what we need to.
Now away from the case of coastal erosion to the menace of dredging in Badore, Ajah, which featured on the last episode of the program, where some stakeholders blamed the federal government for approving licenses for these dredgers. The Honourable Minister states the position of the government on this.
Well, dredging is a big challenge, and I think that many of those that are participating in it, and clearly this is something that is illegal, this is not something that we've approved. We have a number of applications that come under the guise of doing things that will shore up erosion, and they end up being dredging. So far, we've got about 6 applications. None of them have been issued with an environmental impact assessment. So from the federal government level, we will be quite clear in saying that we haven't given approval to do dredging like that is destroying the environment, and quite clearly investments that have been made in infrastructure before. The state government also has a role to play. I think together with the state government, what we need to do is to strengthen the regulatory framework and to find a way of knowing what is happening and to go there and address it immediately. I think one of the things the Minister and I have found when we first took over the Ministry of Environment is that we need to find a quicker way of getting real-time feedback for some of the issues and challenges like the dredging.
She also says more regulatory enforcement and media support are keys to effectively tackling environmental issues.
The media putting a spotlight on this is also very useful. In many cases we might not know. I think one other aspect to media now is that we've got the advantage of social media. So we hear a lot through that and we check it, and I think that's what we're about now, is making a change in the way that we approach these things and being more proactive and not just waiting, but saying, well, there is an issue with dredging. Where are these issues most prevalent and what can we start to do? Once communities are aware that we care, they will also respond to us and help us to do this. Once those who are doing what they shouldn't be doing know there's going to be a spotlight or someone looking over their shoulder, they're less likely to do it. So I think, we have to find the deterrents, we have to enforce the regulations, but at the end we have to also find alternatives. Many of the things that are done that shouldn't be done are done because people are looking for a living. And I think that also has to be taken into consideration. What are the alternatives? Because that's the sustainable way of ending some of these practices, is finding what the root cause is and addressing it.
Meanwhile, from an eyewitness video and pictures sent in, the dredgers and tipper drivers have begun the clearing of sand deposit on the Ajah-Badore road so as to ease commuting there. This is a laudable collaboration. We also gathered that there is now an embargo on the purchase of wet sand. This is in a bid to stem infrastructural decay.